So, welcome everyone to this values-based meet. We're very happy to be welcoming Neil and Jane Hawkes. Neil Hawkes is the founder of Values-Based Education, and Jane Hawkes is a psychotherapist who drives a lot of the science behind what we do at Values-Based Education. And we have our CEO, Bridget Knight, who's going to introduce the speakers. And just a quick shout out to Sue Webb, who's the Executive Director of VbE, who does a lot of driving of what we're doing. And the theme for today is about caring for yourself. We have such difficult times at the moment, and there's such enormous stress on teachers, staff, teachers, and head teachers in particular. Sometimes it's very difficult for teachers, and particularly head teachers, to be able to look after themselves. So this session is specifically for those people who are under enormous stress, who don't have the support or opportunity to handle their own issues. And that's what this session is all about. So if I may, I'm now going to hand you over to our CEO, Bridget Knight.
Thank you, Nigel. And yeah, welcome everybody. It's just so lovely to see you. And it's like welcoming friends back into my house. It's just lovely. Yeah, so today we thought it was right and proper to focus on looking after ourselves, and how appropriate is that when the greater part of the world is living through this pandemic. It's appropriate for right now, but it's appropriate for always, because partly because of the work we do, but also just because this is human need, and it's right and proper to think about how we can best look after ourselves. So I got to thinking about the subject for today's session, and remembering a time 3 years ago or so, when I first met Neil, and he was at West Kidlington School. And in first meeting Neil, of course, I first met values-based education and saw for myself how profoundly different a way of enacting education this was. And I remember at the time, and still today, being so struck by something that, in fact, one of Neil's teachers said about values-based education. Because she said, well, we've learned that what's right for the children is right for us as adults too. You know, whatever the children need, we need. And those simple words are just so striking, and they resonate today really as much as they did then, bearing in mind that at the time when I first came across values-based education, I was working in an environment that was highly anxious making, and anxiety seemed to fill our everyday lives in our working place. Happily, I no longer work in such an environment. But you know, what I've seen through the course of my career is that in all schools everywhere, no matter what part of the journey they're on, those simple truths stand true. We all need the same thing, don't we? We need it always. We all need kindness, unconditional positive regard, hope and aspiration, if we're to flourish. And that teacher, Neil, all those years ago, was so right, wasn't she? And that got me thinking about VbE, and you know, what is it about this profoundly different way of working? And I just thought it was worth us considering again all those 7 main elements that make up this approach, and looking at them from our perspective as adults, as people. So starting with modelling, all our modelling that we do, and we do so consciously and unconsciously, amplifies the kindness, the careful consideration for others, and informs our actions. And I think that, you know, when we feel that we are being led in a values-based way, when we feel that those around us mirror these values for us, then we start to feel at ease and we feel nurtured. Same for the adults as for the children. The inner curriculum, well, of course, you know, what we're really talking about today is about how to be properly curious about our inner selves and how we can consider our emotions, honour those emotions and nurture them so that they can be better understood. And that's so that we learn about ourselves as we learn about others and our world. The next element of this approach, something particularly dear to my heart, is reflection. And of course, where stillness is prized, we truly discover ourselves. And as I said last time to those of you who were here, you know, resonated in those words by 9-year-old Saskia, who said, "I love the time when we're really still because it makes me find the real me." Wise words from one so young. The atmosphere that we create through doing all of these things, the unconditional positive regard where we feel valued, that enables us to flourish. Which one of us can flourish when we feel criticised, scared, nervous, unsure? Values-based education makes prominent and makes central the need for a cohesive and positive atmosphere. And the curriculum that we teach, I think, gives us agency as teachers, and arguably agency is something that's been a little bit lost in recent years. You might disagree with me. One teacher did say to me, "We don't all want agency." Actually, thank you. Quite happy doing what somebody tells me. But I think agency gives us that, you know, that real impetus, that passion, and that drive, and that's what keeps me alive. And you know, I fancy that's what everybody needs a little bit of to enable us to enjoy what we do. You know, enjoyment is perhaps an underestimated virtue, but if we love our jobs, if we love the process, then, you know, our energy is you know, really replete. And leadership, of course, honourable, ethical, purposeful leadership, so that we want to go to the places it's going to take us. And as leaders ourselves, we want to be those values-based leaders, don't we? So that we are able to take our staff with us and know in our heart of hearts that we're doing our best, giving people what they need. So these are the conditions that enable all of us, I think. I agree with your teacher, Neil, young and old, small or tall, whoever we are, we need all these things that values-based education sets out to give. And moreover, I think when this approach, when values-based education takes flight, when it comes to life and is the beating heart of all that we do, it's in relationship and in community with others. So we are talking about ourselves today and what's right for us as individuals, but we know from the science of happiness that actually true happiness comes from that connection with other people. It comes in concert with one another. And when we focus outwards, when we do something for somebody else, that is when we are truly nourished ourselves. And what brilliant symmetry that is. Isn't life beautiful sometimes? And I think that's what the values-based education movement means. Certainly means to me that being part of this movement, we are looking after ourselves, and in order to, in being so, we're taking other people down that path too. So I just wondered if we might turn to Anne at this point, because Anne and I were talking earlier this week about how we're both getting on as head teachers in our new and slightly unexpected world. And we were talking about the place of values-based education. So Anne, may I invite you to come in at this point?
Yeah, I won't take up an awful lot of time, but I was talking to Bridget and I was reflecting and thinking, and I just made a few notes to sort of just see where we were at this moment in time. And I just think all our roles are so amazing, and they're really fulfilling, but they're that because we're so connected with our children and with our staff and our communities. And this time has taken a little bit of that connection away and has certainly sort of changed the way that we've had to stay in touch with people and how we've had to sort of connect with our communities. And I think every day I personally connect with the values that guide me and support me. And over the last few days, particularly with the changing situation with some of my parents losing their jobs, feeling really uncertain, looking for guidance, and feeling in some ways quite frustrated, as well as maybe a little bit sort of desperate about what's ahead of them. And I've really, really had to think carefully about respecting and appreciating unity and hope, both as an individual, but as a school. And I think what I've had through values can really, really help. Values are at the heart of what I've sort of personally and professionally sort of have helped to guide me and what I know. And this values family before lockdown and COVID, but I think particularly during these weeks and these meetings have been absolutely invaluable. And they've been like a little, I can only describe it as a little pearl really, this little pearl that sort of is just so precious and just so amazing and so valuable. And to me, the values has been that little pearl for me, and I always try and sort of put things into some visual. I'm quite a visual learner, so this sort of values group has really helped me. It's been really positive and it's made me take time and prioritise. I mean, there's always lots of other things that could have happened at these times when these meetings have happened, but I've really, really prioritised that, and I've really, really valued us coming together. I've drawn on lots of the practical things that have been shared as well. The planting, the growing, the becoming one with nature, looking at ways of encouraging our families at home to really get in touch with nature and the outdoors, as well as doing a lot more of that in school in terms of cooking and planting and what's around us. I've picked up on the little washing up bowls for sand trays and water trays that were suggested. The little golden thread that I think was described at some point, just I see that golden thread of values running through everything, and I've tried to take that little thread out into my families and my communities, even though I don't know whether people are aware, but I'm shielding some at home. So I've really had to kind of make sure that that little thread goes out beyond my home and into my communities, and it's been brilliant. I hold on to my little pools of water. I think about my little pools of water. Family vibes have been amazing. I know we're going to talk about it. And I think breathing deeply and meaningfully is something that I know that I've had to make sure that I do, and it's something that I really want to encourage others to do, and that's come from this group and me really taking the time to focus on what values really, really means, and how not only I can live values, but I can help others live values, and the values that are relevant to them at that time, because they're all really important, but some of them come, don't they, the balance changes sometimes, and some values are just really important at certain times. So a little bit of what Bridget said, I know that where I am emotionally has a really big impact on how other people are, and I think it reflects back on me, so I can see the way I am reflects back on me. And I think that's what you were saying about the modelling, Bridget. You can actually see that. You can see, even when you do a lot of remote things, which I've done, the way I am and the way I feel, and it actually does reflect back on you. And over the weeks it's become much more positive, even though this is a very, very strange way of working. You know, we came into the profession to be connected, didn't we, with people and with families, and have that personal connection, and it's been very different. But it's quite incredible that if you really think about and reflect on you and what values really mean and how you can pass those on to others, you can literally do that through a screen, which I found quite remarkable. You don't have to be in that physical space. So I've just shown that the values that I hold so dear, I kind of hopefully passed it on to others, and I kind of take a deep breath, and I think I want to be there even more for others than I was before. I mean, I'm really privileged. Bridget and Lee's hopped on today. We're part of a little, physically quite a close hub, so we work really closely together anyway, and that's a massive privilege for me. But I just really wanted to just thank all of you who have become such an amazing values hub for me over these last few weeks. And I think by giving to me as much as you've given to me in a practical, emotional, professional, values, harmonious way, because you've given it to me, you've given it to an awful lot of other people. So
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you, Anne. That's beautiful.
I get very emotional, so I'm glad it was me first, and I can just enjoy everybody else's afterwards. But I do sincerely want to say thank you from not just me, but from all those people that this has helped. And like I say, values was really, really important and something that I held very dear. But I have used it so much more, and I sincerely thank you as a little values family. Thank you.
Well, thank you too. Thank you too.
Pleasure. I'm going to mute myself.
That's beautiful, Anne. Thank you. Deeply treasured. So we've established that that values gives everybody in our work, as well as our children, you know, the energy to go on and to go onwards. Reflection is a big part of that, and I'd love to introduce Jane now to just lead us a little bit further down that particular road. And I think Jane's going to share with you a resource that we're looking to develop with you in mind, and to be able to share with you in the future. So thank you, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. And Anne, thank you so much for your heartfelt story, really, of how important this values meet has been. And I echo that. I really, really think it's a very special space for all of us. But I am going to invite us now to just take a few moments to go inwards. And I'd like you to start by really feeling yourself sitting comfortably and safely in your seat. And if it's possible, to have your feet, both feet, on the ground. So really sensing you're sitting with dignity and you feel your spine is tall and straight and strong. And if you're comfortable, either gently close your eyes now or just let your gaze soften somewhere. And take a few moments just to begin by watching your breath, your natural breath. Your breath, which breathes your body for you. And take a moment to notice any activity that may be going on in your mind. Simply noticing this and accepting it. Now move your attention to any physical sensations or emotions that might be in your body. And again, just noticing and accepting any sensations or feelings. Returning your attention to your breath, just begin to breathe slightly more deeply, increasing the length of your inhalation and extending the length of your exhalation too. And see if you can sense that you're really breathing deeply to the base of your spine. Begin to imagine your breath traveling up and down your spine. Inhaling, sensing the breath rising up, and exhaling, flowing back down your spine. Now feel your feet strongly connected to the ground. And sense the energy fueling your body from your feet to the crown of your head. Sensing the energy of the earth really rising through your feet, through your body, to the crown of your head. Feeling your body now filling with your breath, which is energizing you, and filling with the earth's energy, adding that extra life force, power, potency. And recognize that you are a warrior of light, full of courage and energy whenever you need an extra boost. And as you stay here breathing, connecting to the earth's energy, I'm going to invite you to just reflect on these words from Paulo Coelho. What he says in one of his beautiful writings is a warrior of light is never in a hurry. Time works in their favor. They learn to master impatience and avoid acting without thinking. By walking slowly, they become aware of the firmness of their step. They know that they are taking part in a decisive moment in the history of humanity, and that they need to change themselves before they can transform the world. Now, return your attention to your breath and your physical body sitting in the chair. Bring a little movement into your body, maybe sort of wriggling your fingers, maybe beginning to move your arms a little bit. And slowly open your eyes. And feeling that strength of energy, feeling your feet on the ground, either stand up or at least just raise your arms into the air, holding that sort of beautiful sense of power, that hero pose, that warrior pose. And remember that this is a really good technique, particularly when you do stand up and you really feel that energy surging through you, to give you the courage to face what often feels like the impossible, and trust that your potential self is absolutely infinite. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you so much for your words. They're very poignant and very really touched a lot of people. So thank you for that. Now I wonder if I could pass you over to Neil, if you're ready to speak, Neil.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I've just been just looking at everybody on the screen, and I haven't got obviously time to mention everybody, but can you know that I do value everybody who's here today. There are some incredible people, well, you're all incredible. There's one person I want to single out today who, not directly but indirectly, has influenced values-based education throughout Europe, and that's my dear friend Chris Harrison, who's here today. Chris, I first knew as a dynamic young head teacher in Buckinghamshire, and I used to go and see him as an advisor, and I was impressed with all that he did. Chris then went on to have enormously important roles with the National Association of Head Teachers, and then he was a real driving force in the European Association of Head Teachers. And it's because Chris ensured that I was invited to an Isha conference in Cyprus that values-based education then found its way to Sweden, to Norway, and many other countries. So Chris, can I publicly thank you for being a wonderful friend to VbE and children worldwide. You are a change maker. You are interested in systemic change. And during this time now, we must think of how to shift the system. We cannot go back to how it used to be. We have this incredible opportunity to shift things into a person focus rather than a profit focus. And education isn't to just produce fodder for a materialistic way of living. Education is to release that internal dynamic of creativity, love of every human being. And so I think we're at a tipping point in education, but don't let us lose it. Those of you who have influence, don't just knuckle under and do the same as ever. Challenge and because we're doing it for children. So, caring for yourself, why do we have to make a systemic change? Well, the Teacher Wellbeing Index of 2019 showed that an alarming 74% of teachers can't switch off and relax. That was before COVID. I suspect that percentage is much higher than that now. So we need to care for ourselves. Remembering, first of all, that we're all okay. You know, I have a part of me that can think, oh, I'm not doing well enough. I don't do this, I don't do that. And I can beat myself up a bit. I think that's a natural disposition of teachers and leaders of schools. We never think quite we're doing enough. But please remember that you are okay as a human being. Give yourself, as Bridget was saying, some positive regard, as well as that for others. There are three basic psychological needs according to the self-determination theory that we have. Teachers need to feel that they are competent. They like to feel that what they do, they're appreciated for because of their competency. if you have an inspection system or testing or league tables, that takes away competency. We need, and Bridget, you referred to autonomy and agency. We need to feel autonomous as educators. We thrive when we can be creative and autonomous. And above all, and my absolute favorite, of course, is to do with relationships. The work that we did at West Kidlington School all those years ago was really about how can we really improve and nurture our relationships with each other as staff, so that we're then in a space where we can model to children. So the system must be based on trust. If you don't base your system on trust, then things don't work. Thich Nhat Hanh, that wonderful Vietnamese philosopher, said that the purpose must be to always nourish yourself first, not only teachers, but the caring professions overall. It's what the Dalai Lama called wise selfishness. When he first said that, I thought, oh, how can you talk about selfishness? But what he meant was you need to nurture yourself, take care of yourself. Otherwise, you can't take care of others. And all of us, me particularly, know that if I'm slightly stressed, if I'm overworked, then my emails reflect that to other people, my conversations reflect that to other people, and I start a chain of events. And then before I know where I am, I'm started what's known in psychology as a game that's set up with other people, that ends up with someone persecuting someone or someone acting as a victim in a conversation. And that's not healthy. And it's usually because I'm feeling tired. So I need to take care of myself first. So change and looking after yourself begins with ourselves at an individual level. I was saying yesterday in a talk to be aware of your vibrations you give out. A lot of the spiritual traditions talk about this more than we do in education, but I think it's relevant. The other day I put my hand, and I'm doing it now, on Jane's back, and she was talking, and I said, do you realize the vibrations I'm feeling from you? And then her tone of voice changed slightly. And then it got me thinking, what does a baby feel inside a mum if the mum suddenly loses her temper and gets cross? So whatever we feel inside and we speak then creates an atmosphere, a vibration. And I think the world in a healing process, which begins with ourselves, needs to set up a vibration of love. So if you can first of all love yourself, which some people find very difficult to do, but loving yourself so that you can send vibrations of love to other people, it doesn't mean that you can't be challenging of each other. I know I can be challenging, but I hope in any conversation I have, I retain my love for the other person at the same time. And hopefully they feel that vibration above anything that I might be saying. So I think that's an important thing to think about in a values-based school, because the children feel that. They know, they spot authenticity, because in working from that basis of love and respect, you are working from your authentic self, which is so, so important. So take care of yourself. And if you're about to write an email and you want to tell someone off, you know, have a moment of Jane time, as I call it. Go inward in yourself. Just pause. I've been counselling a young lad in our village who was about to be interviewed for the head boy's role in his school. And I said to him, before you have your online interview, just go inward, take a moment of pause time, so that when you go online, you can be genuinely yourself. Otherwise, the acting parts of us or the nervous parts of us will take over. And I'm really interested to see how he's got on. He wrote me an email saying, oh, I think I've done okay, Neil, but we'll have to wait and see. So the importance of breathing, and I want Jane just to say a word. She's talked on breathing before, but I think you've got a technique that will be useful for us in caring for ourselves.
Yeah, this is just a really simple breath practice that I'm going to invite us all to do now. And it just starts by having your left hand crossed over by your right and just placing that in the center of your chest, in what we would call your heart center. And just allow yourself to take 3 slightly deeper breaths. And know that as you connect with your heart center, you're connecting to the small, steady flame that's always there for you. And I invite you to remember that your potential self is infinite. So just occasionally when maybe things are feeling too much, just allow yourself those 3 simple breaths, connecting to your heart center. Thank you.
Thank you. Something I think I'm very keen about is encouraging people to have what I call, or rather Thich Nhat Hanh called in his book, it's called a breathing room. And if I'm feeling a bit touchy with Jane, you say, does he ever feel touchy with Jane? Well, occasionally I might. And she with me too. That's normal in any relationship. But we go into a room, which is called our breathing room, and we just spend a few minutes there. It saves a lot of time than standing arguing with each other. If you just say, oh, I'm off to the breathing room for a moment, it just allows you to settle. And when you come back together again, you don't pick up on the argument, you've let it go, and you can, again, refer to your authentic self. So having a breathing room, I know a number of schools have a part of their classroom which can be a sort of breathing space where a child who's feeling emotionally upset can be allowed just to go there for a few moments to calm down. This isn't a naughty room or anything of the past like that. It's a place where, because we all need those times to just withdraw for a moment. So daydreaming. As a child, I spent a lot of time daydreaming. That's probably why I didn't do very well at school. And I was always being told, oh, Neil, stop daydreaming. And teachers tend to do that a bit now, but my psychologist friends tell me that daydreaming is really important for our inner world, our stability. And so having time to daydream is really important. Practicing this silent sitting, pausing to be, reflection. I used, when I first started, picked up on the term traffic control, because it controls the traffic of your brain by slowing it down. But always doing that, especially if you're a secondary school teacher and you're going from class to class, you may have picked up the atmosphere of a previous classroom, which has wound you up a little bit. But before going to a new class, just take that minute of pause, nip to the toilet or somewhere, some space where you can just be. And then when you go into your classroom, you will find that, again, you've returned to your centered position. And the class doesn't pick up on the vibrations of your previous engagement. So always remember to be a human being, not just a human doing. Take time. Just referring to Jane and myself again, we have lots of sort of little routines. One of them is to start the day with reflective practice. And the second is, Jane, I love hearing her read from some of our books. Sue Jones, one of the books you gave us, it's called Love. You may remember giving it to us. And it has wonderful poems, inspirational poems. And Jane reads from that on a daily basis. We also read perhaps from the Stoics or from Shakespeare, but some nourishment that starts the day. And I find through Jane's reading that the day then starts on a very positive note because we've been inspired, rather than us just leaping about and saying, oh, we're rushed. But of course, we do set our alarm earlier than most people to enable us to do that. So we still get on with work fairly early, but we've taken time for nourishing our internal world in that way. Something I was reading about in the College of Teachers magazine, some of you may see that little journal, Impact, and a researcher was saying that he had found that if teachers spend some time on journaling, particularly towards the end of the day, actually dumping down what's happened to them in the day. Because remember, we as teachers give out. We're like batteries giving out. Do we have time to reflect on ourselves? And having that cathartic process of thinking about what your day has been, just for 10 minutes or so, apparently has an enormous effect. The researchers found that people said that they'd felt 93% of improvement in their own well-being. They were able to cope more by that. Something, Jane, you taught me. She said, Neil, if you ever have a letter you really want to send to somebody because they've really rattled you, you know, write the letter and then immediately tear it up. Because then you've got out of your system all those perhaps slightly challenging feelings, so that when you do write, you're not writing from those parts of your personality that have got upset. So can I commend journaling? Lastly today, I'm going to, of course, mindfulness is the buzzword. When at West Kidlington we started reflective practice, mindfulness wasn't there. You'll know John Kabat-Zinn's wonderful quote, mindfulness is the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness. It's staying more in the moment. And Dan Siegel brought up a lovely acronym called COAL, C-O-A-L, COAL. And living by COAL, I think, is a good thing. What does it stand for? C, curiosity. Be curious about things in your life, not so much judgmental. Always be curious. Again, Jane has told me a lot about that, because I think I could be judgmental. So curiosity. Be open to what's happening around you. Be totally open. Let it all come and relax in that moment of openness. Accept then. The A stands for acceptance. Acceptance of the situation you find yourself in. The wonderful book, Man's Search for Meaning. I'm sure you've read it. Man's Search for Meaning. That book taught me a lot about how you need to accept your situation, even if you can't change it. But you can transform your inner world that you may not be able to transform. So Viktor Frankl's book, absolutely brilliant, as many of you have heard me recommend that before. The last of COAL is love. Love is a word, I wrote about it in my Value of the Week blog several weeks ago. Love in Greek has many versions. In English, it's just one word that covers everything. But I think you all understand what I mean by love. It's that unconditional acceptance of another human being, starting with yourself. So, COAL, curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love, the foundations of mindfulness. And in preparing today, I prepared a sort of hour and a half's talk because I got carried away with it. So I've just given you a flavour today of this, but I hope those of you in school will be able to use one or two of the points that I've made in order to talk with staff about that, because I think in sharing and talking together, that again is how we maintain our own and each other's well-being. So thank you very much, Nigel.
Wow, thank you, Neil. Thank you, Jane. There is a theme that seems to have gone through all the speakers of this idea of what's in yourself gets reflected off to others, which gets reflected back onto yourself again. So the idea of, I know a lot of teachers and head teachers struggle with taking care of themselves because they keep putting other people forward, and they put their own needs well below those of others. Well, for you or for those teachers in that area, could I just highlight that you've almost got an obligation that if you really do want to care for other people, you can't do it unless you care for yourself. So this came out quite loudly in quite a lot of the speakers. And Neil, thank you so much for raising the concepts of the inner curriculum as being the start point by which you can think about caring for yourself, and with some of those very practical ideas of how you can return to your centered position, which seems such a great analogy. So this idea of caring for yourself can go in lots of different directions, but what a powerful and profound way to start simply by breathing, giving yourself a little bit of space, a bit of reflection time. And I just want to mention a couple of some very interesting comments that people had made. Amanda was talking, Jane, Neil, when you were talking about the babies feeling the vibrations, was talking about seeing reactions in babies who come from mothers who've been abused, that they become very sensitized to voice change and other emotions, which carries on as the children grow. She also mentioned that that the children in her class know that they can take a time break when time's difficult, and this opportunity for the children is a very powerful and important part. But of course, it relates back to the staff as well. It's equally important. And Diane has got an interesting technique at their school where their staff have a formal debrief session at the end of the day where they can offload. This is the equivalent of the journaling, but with the knowledge that there'll be no judgments. So Diane, that's such a powerful suggestion that you're making, or a powerful practice you have in schools, and I'm sure other schools will find that very, very useful. And a number of people have talked about thanking you and asking questions about how often do we rattle the batteries to trying to recharge. So I just want to say thank you to all the speakers and thank you to everyone coming along to this session. Very interesting, potentially some very powerful support. And just at a personal level, I can only just urge anyone who's listening to this that you really do need to take care of yourself first. And that if you can't look at it just as a personal need that you need to fulfill, look at it as a need to help other people, that the better you can look after yourself, the better you can look after everyone else. So from everyone here at Values Based Education, thank you very much for joining us.